Добрий день, шановні.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have very interesting program, and we're so happy that our Baltic friends came to us. I first of all would like to introduce Mr. Andrius Kubilius, former Prime Minister of Lithuania in 2008-2012. He's the leader of the Homeland Union, Lithuanian Christian Democrats, and he is here today with his colleagues, Mr. Audronius Ažubalis, who's the former Minister of Foreign Affairs, and also we're joined by Boris Tarasuk, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, twice Minister of Foreign Affairs, and also the MP. And they would like to present the initiative, which is called Europe Goes to the East.
Minister of Lithuania. He's here with his colleague, Mr. Audronius Ažubalis, former Minister of Foreign Affairs. They're currently in opposition in Lithuania. However, they are very proactive in terms of Ukraine, and they have invited also Boris Tarasuk, former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine and current Member of Parliament. And they will speak more deeply. They will speak about a new initiative of the European People's Party, which was initiated by the Lithuanian party, called Europe Goes East. So without much further ado, I would like to pass the floor to our distinguished speakers. They will speak in Russian to make it easier for everyone, but we have translation, interpretation into English or and Ukrainian, so feel free to ask your questions in any language you wish. Thank you.
Доброго ранку. Very briefly, I will say a couple of words. Together with my colleague Audronius, we came to Kiev yesterday, and today we will have many meetings. Before that, we visited Moldova, Chisinau, and in fact, we are talking everywhere about the strategy, European strategy of Eastern Partnership, which plays very important role for the whole of Europe, for the whole region. And we see in this program and this strategy a very good future. And we take care so that the strategy is implemented as efficiently as possible. Approximately a year ago, we had the delegation here. We were here also with Audronius, and we had many meetings, and we were talking about signing association agreement, about different political developments. This year we see that Ukraine has moved forward very much towards European integration. We see what are the big problems which are created by the Kremlin and by the President Putin. We would like to be, and we see our role in being the voice of Ukraine and European structures. We are the members of European People's Party, together with the party Batькivщина and Udar party, and seeing how important are the events taking place here. We started a month ago the informal network of the representatives of the rightist and central forces in our region, all over Europe, to promote the main strategy of Eastern Partnership, putting forward the vision that Europe has to clearly say that Ukraine will have the chance to become the member of EU, and we are ready to help in that as much as we can. Now, Audronius, a couple of words. Europe could be criticized for for everything, and we very often criticize our bureaucrats, and many like to do that, but the policy of Eastern Partnership in the end of the day is successful. We can see that because of such reaction of the Kremlin. I mean, the aggression, the war against Ukraine. And in this sense, we are trying to conduct the European policy of open door. And that is why we're here today. Very quickly, Andrius Kubilius will go to Brussels, where there be the meeting of the heads of EPP parties, the heads of Europe, and we will share there what we have seen here, and in the future this will help us avoid one thing, which the phrase which is conflict in Ukraine. There's no conflict in Ukraine. There is aggression against Ukraine, but to achieve this understanding and to achieve some common actions, that's not as easy as we would like it to happen. We want the sanctions. We want stronger sanctions, but looking for consensus is what is the foundation of the European Union. But meeting with your politicians, with your leaders, we've learned something, and that is this is our duty to share what we've seen. Labadena, good afternoon. If you have friends in Ukraine abroad, among them the biggest ones are Lithuanian Republic. Today in Ukraine, we have the delegation of the Lithuanian Sejm, and the politicians who are known not just in Lithuania but all over the world. For many years, I've had the opportunity to communicate, to talk to politicians from different countries of the European Union. And I would like to tell you that one of the most consistent supporters of Ukraine in the European Union and in the Nato is Lithuania. I would like to remind you that the role of Lithuanian Republic has always been important in very difficult moments for Ukraine. It was the case in 2004 during the Orange Revolution, when the president of Lithuania of those days, Mr. Adamkus, joined famous politicians in Europe and in the world, and was trying to become the intermediary in resolving very difficult political crisis in Ukraine. I was pleased during Euromaidan to accompany Lithuanian delegation, Lithuanian politicians, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania in Maidan, when they brought not just the feeling of warmth towards the participants of Euromaidan, but they also brought warm gloves in winter, and that was these were distributed here in Maidan. So the topic of today's press conference, as we know, is European Union, Lithuania, Ukraine. Thank you. Questions? I have a question to Mr. Kubilius. Today we've got the information that this was the statement made by Lavrov that in Ukraine the ethnical cleaning started against Russians, and now there's a big threat of possible new intervention. There were some statements made today. My question is to you, to Lithuanians, to Lithuania. Your country is a multi-ethnical country. There are people from different countries living there, and you know that in Ukraine we don't have that problem. We are both bilingual, Russian and Ukrainian language speaking people. How have you resolved that issue in Baltic countries, in Baltic states? So do you believe you still have that issue there? Is there a threat that the Russian language population in Lithuania could appeal to Moscow to requesting to protect their interests? You know, first of all, here in Ukraine, you are protecting your state from the new type of war. And a lot that you have to fight against. We are following that. And this new war, as we all see, is not just the military aggression, open military aggression with weapons, with mortar launchers, but that's also information aggression. And information aggression is something that I can call a new step of information aggression. In fact, we all know your situation before that war, when there were no ethnical conflicts. Well, we don't have any ethnical conflicts, but the information war, but it is very easy to create information war based on that issue. When we say what should be the conclusions made by Europe from your experience from that war, I always mention three very simple things. Europe should immediately tell about the perspectives for you to have European membership in the European Union. Europe has to work on its energy independence a lot. When we were in the government from 2008 till 2012, we were investing a lot into our energy independence, and we showed that a lot could be achieved. Europe has to follow the same route. It shouldn't be as much dependent on Russian energy supplies as it is now. And the third thing that Europe should be doing, it should start working on information defense against such attacks which we see now. My question is to the Lithuanian guests, Mr. Kubilius and Mr. Ažubalis. We know that on the 27th of June, the economic part of association agreement will be signed, but we do not see any progress as to the perspectives of the membership of Ukraine and the EU, because we see too bureaucratic approach from Brussels, from EU to the membership of Ukraine in the EU. How can we, what can we do with that bureaucratic approach of European Union to Ukraine? I know that Mr. Kubilius mentioned that he doesn't know any other nation that would be ready to give their lives for membership in Europe. So what would be your advice? What should we do? You are right. We see very important development here. For that, we are setting up this informal inter-party network so that in Europe, in the capitals of old Europe, we can show how important it is for Europe to say as soon as possible about your perspectives as to the membership in the EU. It will take time. Ukraine will not become the member of the EU tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. For us, after we signed the association agreement in 1995, We had to work very hard for almost 10 years, and then only we became the members of European Union in 2004. But why we were moving in this direction, why we were implementing the reforms. We knew that we will become the members of the EU. That was stated by the European Union. The same should be stated as to the membership of your country, Moldova and Georgia. How can you achieve it so that Europe does not just get involved into bureaucracy? We all together should be doing quite serious political work, and for that we are ready to put all our efforts. I will add, in principle, the prospects for Ukraine or Moldova or Georgia, the prospects of membership in the EU, that's purely political decision, but I would not diminish the bureaucratic procedures, because Europe is based on the law, and the legal aspects are very important for you, for Ukrainians. When you start going there, this will mean implementing reforms, the reforms which people will feel, and they will be not just beneficial but also painful. But where we were implementing reforms because the Brussels diplomats were insisting, we could feel big progress. Where Brussels was not so much forcing us, we know that we have to do a lot even now.
I'd like to add that I have a lot of experience talking to bureaucrats of European Union, and I can say that bureaucracy of European Union is quite inventive. For many years, European Union tried to avoid formulas that would allow Ukraine perspective of European Union membership. Many different formulas were invented, like European Union supports European intentions of Ukraine, European directions of Ukraine, while specifically avoiding answering the question of what is a Ukrainian perspective. And out of all the institutions of European Union, we can see that European Parliament is most continuous, that has stated that Ukraine has right to apply for a European Union membership as European country. Talking about executive agencies of European Union, including the Council and Commission of European Union, they're more careful in this regard. But I'd like to point out that in recent months, the phrase has been repeated. Association agreement is not the final goal of relating between European Union and Ukraine. So this is veiled answer to the question of perspectives. To you, Boris Tarasuk, the question is, during Kuchma's time, NATO support was 30%. For during Yushchenko, 20%. You remember the Bucharest fiasco. But for all the countries that joined EU first, joined NATO, because this is guarantee not only of military security but guarantee of democracy, that guarantee the country would never return to dictatorship. NATO has been removed from the main law and external policy of Ukraine 4 years ago. For you as a member of parliament, former minister of foreign affairs, and Euro-Atlantist, where is NATO today? What is perspective of Ukraine joining NATO? And I understand that nobody wants to talk about this at this time, but I'm interested in your opinion. I would disagree that nobody wants to talk about it. Batькivщина has been stating its intention to join NATO. It will not, this understanding did not come at once, but after events related to Russian aggression. Word NATO has been spoken many times in political lexicon of Ukraine. Who is the biggest supporter of Ukraine membership of NATO? I would say Putin, because from the moment of Russian aggression against Ukraine, the number of supporters of NATO has doubled from 19% to 38%. And recent survey showed that 47% of Ukrainians support Ukrainian membership in NATO. What is this? What am I saying? Membership of NATO is not a preliminary condition to join European Union, but both organizations have common denominator. They have same criteria for human rights, for supremacy of the law, and all other political and democratic foundations, principles. So supporting joining EU and or joining NATO and EU requires many reforms and transformations in Ukraine, of course. NATO and Ukraine phrase is more scary for the capitals of NATO countries, not for Kiev. In Kiev, they say NATO and Ukraine. Often in European and NATO capitals, they are afraid to say NATO and Ukraine because there is syndrome of fear. What if then NATO would have to confront Russia? I will tell you directly that NATO and EU is not ready to confront Russia. Today, Ukraine is at front line of fighting dictator regime of Russia for democratic principles and for freedom. Practically everything was said. I absolutely agree. I can only add that in some way we must thank Mr. Putin for many things that we experience today. We can thank him for the end of our suffering. For the last 10 years, we talked for 10 years about aggressiveness of Putin regime, and people considered us mentally challenged people with syndrome of the past, and now everybody understands that we were right. So this is achievement of Mr. Putin, that Western countries, Western democracies, were never so united. Maybe they don't know what to do with such a regime, how to stop this aggression, but such unity and such realistic view of Putin's regime is a great achievement of Putin himself. He has been able to provoke such understanding. Yes, we have much work ahead of us in the capitals of old Europe, in capitals of the Western world, to prove that Ukraine's membership in European Union and possibly in NATO is not an instrument against Russia. It's instrument to help Russia. The West must understand that promoting Ukraine and other countries of Eastern Partnership closer to Europe, leaving this post-empire area of influence, is effective instrument of helping Russia from the West. Russia will get opportunity to become a better state, because the Western policy towards Russia in recent years, this word in engagement, appeasement, may they do what they want, we'll just try to get used to it. That was a way of mistake. Something that might work Something that might help Russia is systemic approach to this territory between European Union and Russia. Ukraine, Moldova, and other countries of Eastern Partnership, if they choose the way of integration with Europe, Europe must help. It will help Russia itself. I remain optimist. Therefore, last question, with your permission, to Mr. Ažubalis. Please tell us more about the program Europe Go East. This is a great initiative. You started it on 1st of May 2014, 10 years after a huge expansion of EU. Enlargement of EU. But I know there are some visits scheduled, some other actions, but you're right-centric parties. What specifically do they plan to do in context of Ukraine? I know you're going to work with Moldova and Georgia and other countries, but what is your Ukrainian action plan? What is your Ukrainian vision? Goals are clear, but the contents, tell us about it more. You know, you cannot have enough contacts between politicians. Very soon we'll have a summit in Riga, and this summit in Riga must produce some results. Lithuania has produced certain results. Associations were signed, association agreements were signed, visa facilitations were promoted, and the situation on Ukraine was open. It revealed some true faces of your former politicians, but this was Lithuania. How about Riga? What will happen in Riga? Our intention is to bind together the political will of European Union so that in Riga, in summit, we'll have yes to EU membership of Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia. Yes, this is very optimistic note to say yes to Ukraine in EU in Riga summit. I want to thank you and to wish you all the best.